Desperte. A grande ilusão do dinheiro, do problema financeiro e do poder.
Se inscreva em nossos canais parceiros. Aqui não esquecemos dos amigos. O Arauto dos Intervenientes. A Aliança e a Lei do Uno, Verdade Exposta. Canal Vírus no Sistema. Canal Recuperar. Japa Dentro e Amandinha USA. Inscreva-se já!
When I was in college, I actually was a banker, and I'm not made to be a banker, so... Well, it was actually very depressing to me because I interacted with a lot of people and was doing transactions for them, and it just really surprised me as to how much money ruled their lives.
Well, I'm always worried about money.
Well, that was after the divorce. But yeah, $1,000 in debt, and I wasn't 30 yet.
It's the whole seduction of money and that lure of a chance to get more.
The normal debt, homes, cars.
We have contests to see who can spend the least amount of money. And I think one day I actually got down to about $1.50 and that's the whole day's worth of food and everything.
Didn't really have much money, and I was constantly struggling.
The time I was most worried about money?
Well, right now I'm really worried about money.
It was a domestic violence situation, and I was afraid that I wouldn't have the income.
Wonder where your next meal is going to come from. Pray that everything's going to work out all right.
I always worry about money, whether I have enough, whether I'm spending too much.
You got to make money. There's just no way around it. You got to do what you got to do, short of illegal things.
I think that if money hadn't been an issue, we would have totally been okay.
Questions I have about money?
If I had any questions about money, what would I like to know?
What is the actual worth of $1 these days?
Money. Money is the source of much anxiety, much confusion, a great deal of suffering.
The standard view is that if you get richer, you get better off and you're happier. Well, it turns out not to be true. People's absolute standard of living, once they're above poverty, is pretty weakly related to happiness.
I'm going to make a rough claim that about 95% of family feuds, problems, breakdowns, are about money. And I'm probably conservative.
In America, you know, to have $1 million means that you're successful. I mean, but what does that really mean?
Why is that? What's so special about money? Why do we deal about money as basically the breakdown in the family? Why is it so frequent?
Our relationship with money is so troubled and so upsetting, and it is not just for people who are trying to make ends meet or who feel marginalized, but even our global billionaires are completely freaked out about money all the time. So having more money doesn't really resolve these problems we have around.
The money system went global, and it began to disorder every local ecosystem and every local social system on the planet.
At the bottom of all the rules is the rule that making money is always more important than anything else.
We've made money more important than human life, more important than the natural world, more important than God or Spirit. And on that really bed of lies, our relationship with money is resting.
This is where we are today, is that the entire apparatus of assumptions underlying economics are simply wrong. So, you know, why do we allow societies to be run with this malfunctioning source code?
Part of the difficulty is that very few people think about what money is, where it comes from, how it is created, and how it is controlled.
Well, remember, there has been 150 years of very intense propaganda and indoctrination to try to drive these ideas out of people's heads.
If we could unpack all of this mystification, we'd probably find that economics was made so complicated in order to mystify people, so they could not really figure it all out.
If everybody knew the full facts about how money is issued, how it's put into circulation, who is issuing it, how they have power and control over the economy and over individuals' lives, I think there'd be a lot of very unhappy people around.
It's often been said that money moves the world, or money is the engine of the world, or money makes the world go round. But in more accuracy, money stops the world from going.
I'm afraid that's more than I care to spend.
Money doesn't facilitate. In its current form, it inhibits transaction and trading.
We live today by exchanging goods and services with one another. And money is the medium that we use to do that. So money actually becomes the controlling element in economics. Those who control money control everything.
Out of the simple barter of primitive people, spearheads became one of the first articles used as money. Shells have also served as money. Wampum was used by the American Indians. And hundreds of other articles have been money to various people at various times.
There are different kinds of monetary systems, and some promote very socially responsible behavior, and some promote very antisocial, destructive behavior.
My view of money in any society, not just modern society, is a projection of the collective unconscious of that society. And the sign, the proof of that, is that every society takes its own money system for granted.
If you try and find out what people think money is, you will be mystified and amazed. It's a confusion, it's inaccurate, it's absurd, it's superstition, it's myth, it's religious, it's crazy. Most people haven't an idea, they just use it. Perhaps it'd be more accurate to say it uses that.
The banks have a complete monopoly on the money creation process. So the public are not actually involved in it at all, directly or indirectly.
Initially, you can think a bank was about storing people's gold. So you come in, you store your gold at the bank, and the banker gives you a gold certificate and says, you have such and such amount of gold in my bank. Now, the basis of the paper money systems was when you could start trading those pieces of paper.
And banks discovered that when people started paying each other with claims to the coins in the bank's vault rather than taking the coins out, that the bank didn't really need to keep all the coins in the vault in order to have enough to actually pay people who did come and want the coins.
The banker realizes nobody's coming to take the gold. Gold's just sitting there. So instead of just putting out one piece of paper that says, there's such and such amount of gold, you can put out a lot of pieces of paper, given the fact that nobody is coming and taking the gold. And you can lend money. And the basis of that loan is the trust that people have that if they want to come and get the gold will be there.
Money in the bank is not actually wealth.
The only thing that makes that system work is the fact that nobody actually does come to get the gold. Now, if everybody said, you know what, I'm going to go get my gold at the bank. If everybody went and got it, there wouldn't be enough gold for everybody.
You often had bank runs and bank panics. When people would have a lack of confidence in a particular bank, they would take those bank notes to the bank and demand their gold and silver. And with fractional reserves, that bank would quickly run out of the reserve metal and have to close its doors.
The reason the bank did it is because they were making money off of earning interest, off of those loans that were promises that there was gold in the bank.
Most economic textbooks never say what money is. They just say what money does. They describe money by its functions. They talk about things like minimum exchange, standard of value, store of value, or the classical ones. These are all things that money does. Money lives in a different space, in fact. It's an agreement.
A lot of people think money is something that's tangible, real, and that you can pick up and handle. That actually isn't so. Money is basically an idea, and it's an idea that you owe someone something, or someone owes something to you. And that idea can be symbolized by an account, where your account goes up and mine goes down, or vice versa. Or it can be symbolized by an exchange of paper currency, or an exchange of coin, whether it's gold, silver, or copper, or whatever. But those are all symbols. It's not actually money.
Another misconception that people have about money is that money is a thing. But in today's world, money is simply credit, which means it's an information system. And the question is, what kind of information does it convey? It's information about claims against the economic output.
You have a bank account that says you have $1 million. You know, it's nice to say I have $1 million, but what really makes it nice is that you can buy $1 million worth of things that you want to buy.
So if money is nothing more than information about what we owe each other, how does the money we use every day get created?
Money is created through a process of bank loans. People, companies, governments going to the banking system and borrowing money. So every dollar, every national currency you've ever seen is someone's debt.
Money is issued whenever someone takes out a loan from the bank. So if I walk into a bank and I want to borrow $500,000 to start a business, and I've got a good business plan and I've got customers, then the bank, assuming they agree, will give me $500,000 to start my business.
There's your money, and this is your payment book.
Thank you.
Now, most people, if you ask them, will say, well, that $500,000 comes from somewhere else. It comes from someone else's savings. It comes from investments. That's actually not true. When I say money is issued as debt, I mean they don't get that money from anywhere. They actually create it out of thin air and create a credit in my bank account, and poof, there it is.
John Kenneth Galbraith, in his book Money, Whence It Came, Where It Went, says this. He says, the process by which money is created is so simple that the mind is repelled. And it's true. When I tell people how money is created by banks, simply by making ledger entries, they just can't believe it.
The private banking system literally creates our money out of nothing and loads it into the economy. The only way new money can get into the economy and ultimately your pocket is via a bank loan. This means that every dollar you have ever seen is someone's debt to a bank.
The simple fact is, and it's an uncomfortable fact for many people to realize, that if all the debts were repaid, then all the money supply would simply disappear. There would be no money. And that would mean a complete and total collapse of the economy.
If everybody were to reimburse their debts, if that were possible, that everybody does reimburse their debts, there wouldn't be any money left. In fact, there's more debt than money available. And the reason is that interest is not created.
The catch is that they want more repaid than what they've given me.
When you go to a bank and borrow $100,000 to buy a house, they will check whether you are good credit, and then they will decide to create the money, entering it electronically in your account, and say you have to bring back $200,000 in the next 20 years. The $100,000 of the first loan is created. The second one, the interest rate, is not created. So they send you in the world, compete with everybody else to bring in the second $100,000. That's how the money is kept scarce. It is through the competition between the different players for interest that is not created. So there's always less money than is necessary. Okay? And it's done systemically.
If you go to a bank and you borrow money into circulation, if the bank decides to approve your loan application, they will make two entries on their books. One is they will take your note, let's say it's a mortgage note, and that will be an asset on the books of the bank, and they will offset that with an equal deposit to your account, which is a liability on the books of the bank. So the money creation process is as simple as that. But the bank does not create the interest that you're going to have to pay year by year by year until this mortgage loan matures. So where does that interest come from?
Where does the interest come from? I have to find that.
Well, it has to come from some other loan that was made to someone else. So you have this inherent deficiency in the money supply. Not everyone can repay what they owe to the banks. At any given time, there is more owed to the banks than exists in circulation.
Which means, inevitably, someone is going to lose the game. Someone is going to go bankrupt, and that has nothing whatsoever to do with the quality of the goods and services or the efficiency of the business. Nothing at all.
Everybody in the economy is vying with everyone else to avoid defaulting on their loans to the banks. And the only way they can do that is by competing with one another for an inadequate supply. So it's like a game of musical chairs. It assures that there must be some losers, regardless of how competent they are in conducting their business.
It's crazy. Sometimes it worries me because, you know, what if there was like a collective understanding about how phony the money is when it comes down to it? What would people do? You know, would they riot in the streets?
Who's propagating the illusion behind the money? That just pisses me off, actually.
Most people's experience with money is that money is scarce. And in today's monetary system, it is scarce.
These cultural lies on which our relationship with money rests and is rooted is really governed almost completely by the most insidious and tragic lie, which I believe is the lie of scarcity.
Even the Federal Reserve publications claim that what gives money its value is its scarcity. And this is false. It's not the scarcity that gives money its value. When we're talking about credit money, what gives it value is its ability to requisition whatever you want or need from the marketplace.
We actually swim in a set of unexamined, unconscious beliefs. And we look out into the world and we just fear that there's not enough to go around without any evidence, really. And then we make that true.
The domination model artificially creates scarcity. And that scarcity is one of the ways that the system actually maintains itself. Not only material scarcity, emotional and yet spiritual scarcity.
I mean, what does it mean to have enough money? I mean, I guess you always want a little more.
There's not enough time. There's not enough money. There's not enough sleep. So it's a constant battle with there's not enough. We don't have enough. It's not enough. I'm not enough. And that is a mindset. It's an unconscious, unexamined mindset that creates distorted behaviors that are inconsistent with who we are.
The same thing that keeps a rich person from giving is the same thing that keeps a poor person from making. It's that conditioned way of thinking and seeing that we have to really begin to address. Those who consider themselves poor in this country are not poor. I think it's this scarcity mentality. You know, I think it's a belief system that we all carry.
And that there's not enough belief system has a second part to it. There's not enough to go around, and someone somewhere is going to be left out. And that inevitable fear or certainty that there's not enough to go around and someone somewhere is going to be left out is actually at the base of our political understanding of the world, our systems of governance, our educational system. It's even at the heart of religion.
Of course there are scarcities that happen naturally. There's a disaster, there's a flood, all kinds of things can happen. But here you have a system that artificially creates scarcity so that then you get people who really are fighting for the spoils, and since there's so much control from up on top, it is a way of maintaining the disunity and the confusion of those on bottom.
What it is, it's emasculated men. And what do men do when they're emasculated? They compensate with hypermasculinity. When you leave, particularly men, with no options, they get violent and they get destructive. I don't care where you're talking about. Go to Russia. What do you think the Russian gangs are? Go to Northern Ireland. Go anywhere in the world. These devastating dynamics are engineered.
So our experience of money as being scarce is an artifact of the money system. In a properly run monetary system, there will be no scarcity of money.
There's not enough to go around and someone somewhere is always going to be left out gives us this very difficult and unfortunate permission to leave people out. Because if someone's always going to be left out, then it's your job and my job to accumulate more than we possibly could ever use or need to distance ourselves from ever being one of those poor people who gets left out.
At the point of view of the corporation, getting more and more and more, that is driven in part by greed, in part by the dynamic of trying to get profits, capitalism, but it's also driven by fear. Because if you don't do it, if you can't expand faster than the next corporation, they will get research money, and they will get marketing money, and they will beat you and may drive you out of the game.
You're not quite as efficient in this plant as you ought to be by our calculations. This is the banker speaking. And so therefore, we're going to either raise the cost of your credit and drive you to do bad things to your workers or to your community or to the environment in order to boost that return and boost your stock price. And we will lend to you under those terms only.
The nice way of saying it is nice guys finish last. If you're callous to the effects on others, you have a potential to rise. The odds are that you can compete your way up. If you care and are socially concerned about others, you're at a tremendous disadvantage. So I think the competitive dynamic that we have does sort of weed out a set of people for success. But I would say that what it weeds out for success is not competence, not creativity, not intelligence, but callousness far more often.
Competition does have its place in urging us to our highest level of performance and fulfillment, but health is dependent on cooperation. We don't have the liver competing with the heart for blood and for nutrients. There is this inherent cooperation that leads to the health of the entire entity.
Ecosystems are based much more on cooperation than they are on competition. We tend to deify cutthroat competition. And there is some competition in nature, but there's much more cooperation.
Species move from competition to cooperation because they discover the economic value of cooperating. It is cheaper, more efficient.
We have 8 billion people on the planet. There's 1 billion of those that are happy to work but can't. There are no jobs for them.
Some would argue that these people are unemployed because they lack skills or because they don't want to work. And that may be true in a few cases, but in the vast majority, That's not the reason why they're impoverished. The reason why they're impoverished is because you have this scarcity of money.
If you have an economy which is generating only a limited number of good jobs, are you surprised that parents feel it's really important to teach their kids how to compete on every level? They want their kids to get those jobs. You know, another kind of response would be to get together and say, hey, wait a second, there's a problem with the structure here. But, you know, we have a very individualistic response to the problem.
If you, say, were in such conditions of duress, you know, that you just couldn't survive except by being a slave, you might sign a contract that says, okay, I'll be your slave. That's by your own free will. I mean, are we going to take that seriously? You know, under some pathological assumptions, I suppose.
We live in an economy which takes 80% of each new generation and educates that 80% to obey orders and to endure boredom, and stifles their creativity, and stifles their capacities, and curtails them. They're systematically crushed by a system which does what? Which fills slots. And 80% of the slots need people who just do rote, tedious, repetitive labor, at least at work, and therefore are acclimated to doing that.
I mean, you could say, you know what? This is a terrible job. I don't want to do it. It's a free market. You have total choice to not show up under these terrible conditions. At the same time, if you don't, little problem here, you're not going to eat, and your family isn't going to eat. And that's why people do it.
Yeah, I really hated that job.
I think many of us nowadays feel the way Charlie Chaplin role modeled long ago, like cogs in wheels, that we're stuck in the machinery of our economy, that we have very little choice. We have to work a 9-to-5 job and watch a little TV and go to bed and do it all over again.
I want to have a more rewarding experience, I guess, with life, and based not just to make money and to say, oh, this year I made 10,000 more than last year.
I think that this whole idea of the middle class in this country is ridiculous. There's no middle class. There's no such thing as that. You know, they're the working poor too, because their whole lifestyle is financed to death. They have the big, beautiful house, the 2 lovely cars. They're putting their kids through college. But if they get fired from their job, all of that stuff is over.
I've always been kind of a cynical person, so I guess to me, doing jobs to just support yourself is just pretty much what life is about.
It's that we do the work we do so often simply for the money. Now, since we're all chasing this money around, it utterly patterns our society.
So hardly realizing it, they come into their purchasing stage and are off on a wild, non-stop ride. It's a happy-go-spending world, reflected in the windows of the suburban shopping centers where they go to buy.
What we're doing is really reinventing the exchange process. We need to mediate exchanges in a different way than we've done before. The debt money system creates money on the basis of interest-bearing debt. It's not debt itself that is at fault. It's the interest component that's attached to the debt. And the interest component does not get created when banks create money on the basis of collateral.
We have to start thinking about money as an information medium, not as a substantial thing. It has been merely an information medium for a couple of 100 years in most respects. But nonetheless, we've stuck ourselves with the idea that there's only so much money. That's the core of its reality concept. That all there is so many trillion dollars or euros or yen, and what we're doing is juggling them. Comes from you, goes to me, goes to him, goes to her. It's to and fro, and we're juggling with a real thing. Therefore, we are always going to have shortages.
In a mutual credit system, each person has an account. And at some times your account may be positive, at other times your account may be negative. You know, it's this allowance for a negative balance that is the fundamental feature of a credit clearing system. This negative balance represents credit that's been extended to you by the rest of the community. I, as a seller, may allocate to you some good or service that you need at the time. I get a credit to my account, you get a debit to your account. Your debit means that you owe something to the community of traders in our credit clearing circle. My credit balance means that the circle owes something to me. There is without a doubt a mega crisis that we're facing in the coming years. And the big elephant in the living room is the money problem. And unfortunately, most people who are active in the sustainability movement and the environmental movement don't understand the nature of this problem. And we're not going to make any significant headway with sustainability or restoration of the environment until we solve the money problem.
Most people, most of us, get up in the morning for things other than just money. We care about things like family and, if you will, betterment, development as whole human beings.
People are not fools forever. And I think we're going to see very strong reaction to this as the pain grows and as the difficulties grow. And that's the time to begin building serious ideas about where we go for the future.
I think we have the opportunity to bring forth an environmentally sustainable, spiritually fulfilling, and socially just human presence on this planet. And I think that is the power and possibility of our time.
I think we can use money as a tool, as a servant to what we want to become, rather than be victims.
We don't need to have all this suffering around money. We can free ourselves from it. And the economy can be much healthier and much more of service to all of us.
Time to become aware. Time to have a consciousness of our potential. And I think our potential as humans is infinite. Let's not limit ourselves through the medium of exchange. Time to wake up.
We have been nowhere near normal this year.